All right.
Okay.
So hello, everyone. And thanks for the opportunity, Sandy and Anna, to share about community choice energy, also known as community choice aggregation. So I'm going to go through a presentation. I've got a couple of people here who are part of Arizonans for Community Choice, which is the organization that's advocating for this model in Arizona. That's Russell Lowe's, wave your hand, Russell, and Scott Hancock, and Judith Anderson may be joining us. So let me go ahead and share my screen. And I'll put this under, this thing is in the way. Slideshow, here we go. Slideshow from the beginning. Okay. And so a couple of technical warnings, which is that sometimes my computer doesn't like the slideshow, so it freezes. So I might have to go back to the creepy version. So as I said, Arizonans for Community Choice, we're a small but mighty statewide organization, and we're advocating for community choice energy. And I think a number of you are familiar with this model, or you've heard me talk about it, or you've talked to others about it. So some of this may sound familiar to you, but for the purposes of this conversation, I'm going to start from the beginning, and you may hear things you've already heard before. So actually, before I go into what is community choice energy or community choice aggregation, just to simplify things, I'm going to call it CCE for the rest of the presentation. I want to share this story, and some of you have heard it before, but I think it bears repeating. It's a great kind of a metaphor for what we deal with in Arizona in terms of energy and the investor-owned utilities. So I'm actually taking a trip to California in a couple of weeks. California is very close to Phoenix. I'm going to San Francisco. So I called, I went on the American Airlines website and I put in the destination, and the price came up $1,600. I'm not kidding, $1,600. I was like, oh my God, I'm not going to pay that. So I said, I'm going to shop around. I went to Expedia and I got a round trip ticket for $242. Guess which one I bought? And, and so I bring that up to say that that's what we're stuck with here in Arizona. The vertically integrated monopoly utility structure gives us no choice. So when APS has a rate case and they go before the commission, and we have a commission that seems to kind of rubber stamp what the utilities are asking for, we're stuck with that. We can go before the commission. We do have a right to protest and say, this is a hardship, and all the things that we say and why it's not fair and why they shouldn't do it. And at the end of the day, there's going to be an increase. If you're, investor-owned utility territory, that's the consequences. So community choice aggregation, or CCE or A, is a model for basically breaking up the monopoly utility, but not like a municipal power. So in Arizona, you can, you as a city can form a municipal power, which means essentially you take over the utilities infrastructure and you become the utility. It costs billions of dollars. It's about $5,000 a meter. So if you live in a town like Tucson or Phoenix, where you have, over 1 million, well, in Phoenix, 1 million residences, that adds up. So this is way, 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 way cheaper. And we're not saying to get rid of utilities. What we're saying is the CCE takes over just the generation portion of what utilities refer to as the bundle. So the bundle includes generation, transmission, delivery, billing. They own the grid, they manage power outages. So all of that remains the same. The only thing the city or county or group of cities are doing is they're taking over the generation portion. And generation is mainly a pass-through cost for utilities. They make their money when they install more poles and wires, infrastructure. So again, the utility continues to, transmit the power, deliver it to your home or business, and maintains the grid and the things I just said. So that does not change. We're just talking about biting off the energy or, generation portion of the bundle. And then the customer, you're automatically opted in because the CCE is aggregating the electric load, just like a utility does, and buying power wholesale. So you, the customer, will get a choice of plans based on how much renewable energy content you want in your, in the mix. That's what it's based on. And the reason that cities want to form a CCA is because they have a renewable energy goal or they have a carbon emission reduction goal. So they want more renewable energy, and particularly in Arizona, where, we all say we have all this potential, we have all this solar, we're the hottest state in the country, or the sunniest state in the nation. And we, APS, for example, has some solar energy, about 13%, which they buy from, I think, other sources. They don't build a lot of solar here. And that's true of the other utilities. So anyway, I'm a little bit all over the place, but basically, just to sum up, a CCA takes over the energy generation portion of the bundle, by aggregating electric load, going to the wholesale market and buying energy. And most CCEs, they hire somebody who's an expert who knows how to do the buying. They hire an energy consultant, and that's how cities start. And then it builds from there. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. So you are automatically opted in. It's an opt-out program, which means you're automatically opted in. That's the only way you're going to get a nice size aggregate load. But you can opt out. You get ample warning that this is going to be a change. So it's not, it shouldn't come as a surprise. And you can opt out and stay with your utility if you want to. Most people don't want to. I think it's like less than 5% of people across the country who are in CCEs opt to stay with their utility. And this gives the community local control over rates, over green energy, and a couple of other things I'm going to talk about. So the top four benefits of community choice energy are, number one, lower rates. The reason for this is that this is a nonprofit structure. A CCE is not in the business of trying to make money off the backs of customers. They are simply, they're run as a nonprofit. So if there are surplus revenues, it gets reinvested back into the community. So number one is lower rates. Number two, local energy choice. So the CCE, and the city takes over the energy portion of the bundle, as I said. And then when there is surplus revenues, as I said, that money gets reinvested back into energy programs, energy efficiency programs. I'm going to give you a list of all the kinds of programs. There's hundreds of programs that CCEs invest in, only limited by their imagination. And then finally, this is a way to increase renewable energy way faster than they're going to get from utilities. And even in states that have more significant energy, renewable energy mandates than Arizona. Ours is 15% by 2025, with no other mandate after that. The cities still want to go faster than what the mandates are for the utilities. So that's the reason they form CCAs. So other benefits, customers across the country they're either, the rates are either competitive or there's really a significant savings. So they're saving from 2 to 25%. I know that that's the number, New Hampshire, which just formed its first CCAs, they are on target to save their ratepayers about 25%. And in Arizona, it would be that much or higher. We've done, Russell can even talk about this, but we've done an analysis comparing a TEP household versus a CCA household, and the same thing with APS. And I'll talk about that in a moment. So the economic development part of this is, again, the CCE reinvests any savings back into the community for programs that are relevant for the community. What does the community need? A quick example is in Lancaster, California, they had enough surplus revenue to invest in electric buses. That's how they use their money. So they issued grants to the local metro authority, and that's what they use that money for. More renewable energy creates jobs, stimulates the economy. And the other thing about community choice is this is consumer choice with protections. So this is, elected officials who form the CCE. It's usually run by a board. The board is comprised of city council members and people who from the utility industry who, I mean, in other states, when they form a CCA, they say utility, staff come a running. Like there's so much more creativity and latitude that they can do. The other thing is that a CCE actually controls rates. So they only raise the rates when their rates are higher, than when they're being charged more for energy. But they don't mark it up to a degree where now it's a hardship for customers. So this is not an energy free-for-all. And CCEs nationwide have proven that when municipalities aggregate their load, you get better pricing, more renewable energy, and more programs. And then reliability, which is, the utilities love to say, oh, if you change anything, if you let other competitors come to the state to sell energy, it's going to affect reliability. That is not true. It is their job to maintain the grid, to balance the grid. And so reliability is a non-issue, and there's no cost shifting. That's because CCEs also pay an exit fee. So, the utility has to be made whole for that departing load, and they are. So that's part of legislation. That's how that happens. And as I said, customers are automatically opted in, but they can opt out and stay with their utilities. So I'll just ask if there's any questions so far, because I kind of jumped around a bit, but I just want to make sure that people understand the basic concept of a CCE.
Shelly, this is Chris Gelker, and I have a big question. I noticed you mentioned generation and transmission, but you didn't talk about storage at all. And storage, as we go to more and more renewable, storage becomes a really big part of the electrical picture. And I know that the experts have models that are fighting about how much storage you need to maintain current reliability, but you obviously need some, and some people say that's more important than generation in terms of cost. So why isn't the CCE contracting with people for reliability? Because if you say reliability relies on the utilities, they're going to provide it. They're going to charge you through the nose for it. The CCE needs to be able to contract for reliability as well, I think.
Well, that's a great point. So CCEs do have the ability to enter into power purchase agreements with, energy developers, suppliers, and that includes storage. So, if you look at this example up here, so they do that, but they are still, any energy that gets generated still goes to the grid. So I guess that's my, this is not like community solar or microgrid, although they do, there are examples of projects like that, but generally CCE is just providing the energy portion. And then there are programs where, for example, like on this slide, the first description here. So I know, for example, in LA, their CCE developed a microgrid with storage for hospitals and fire stations, buildings that must operate 24/7. So there's projects like that, but in terms of, I guess I'm not sure about storage and the grid and how that actually works with the CCE. Mostly they're buying power. So I guess I'd have to, look into that and come up with an answer for you.
Well, we have SRP that's just argued that, we need all this gas fired for reliability.
Right.
And
so
but they'd have to have some kind of storage for reliability. And the low-hanging fruit, from what I've been able to discover, is people hanging big weights down abandoned mine shafts. And somebody could build those and contract with CCEs to provide storage.
Well, I'm writing this down, Chris. I'm going to get the answer to this. And looks like Russell might have a response to this. So go ahead, Russell.
So CCE typically initially buys a lot just from the general grid, from specific utilities across the region, and buys wholesale, and then as it gets more mature over the first few years, it goes into high speed and goes into more and more power purchase agreements, and actually starts to build some of its own solar if they select, depends on the CCE. But power purchase agreements are the biggest thing. And there's a really great spreadsheet that you can get to see about 1,000 PPAs or power purchase agreements are listed by the Lawrence Berkeley Laboratory and I can send you the link for that if you want to email it to me or email me a request on that. I don't have it at my fingertips, but that spreadsheet basically shows that solar is being matched with a really high percentage of storage, anywhere from 25 to 100% matching of storage capability. So that's where the CCE will become just as reliable as a utility in its energy mix and the energy mix portfolio. The current energy mix portfolio that APS has, for example, has 3 gigantic nuclear reactors. And if any of those reactors go down, it'll be a severe strain on the utility if it happens during the peak period in the summertime. And that's somewhat likely. You know, there are beyond design basis issues that can occur now with heat and humidity that weren't included in the original design of those reactors in the early 70s. And that's because of global warming.
So so thank you, that's helpful. You know, if you think about it, if you think of the grid as a kind of a continuum, you know, the CCE, or, you know, let's say Tucson forms a CCE, it would be their portion of the grid that they're going to green. That's kind of how I think about it. You know, we're not talking about the whole grid. We're going to, you know, we're taking over. That's not, we don't own, you know, the city wouldn't own the grid. It would just be its portion that it's going to, you know, increase renewable energy around. So, so these are just some examples of different kinds of programs that CCEs fund with the surplus revenues that they generate. So there are, you know, we're looking at this, there's different kinds of CCEs, and we're looking at the wholesale model, similar to what they have in California, where, you know, they buy the power wholesale, they mark it up, they have enough energy to, or enough surplus revenue to invest in these different kinds of programs. Benjamin.
Hi, Shelly. In regards to storage, I'm fascinated when I follow the market and find all sorts of options available now to homeowners. Everyone knows about a Tesla Powerwall, fine product, but for pennies on the dollar now, you can buy very nice, reliable, warranted, UL-listed systems of lithium iron phosphate batteries, and inverter combinations along with charge controllers. There seems to be almost an underground movement to do these, and some people are just taking themselves off the grid altogether with some of these products if they had that option with solar on the roof. And I noticed you had electric vehicles up there. There's always the topic of being able to use your electric vehicle as storage. And I know that there is a something in the California legislature right now that is insisting that all vehicle manufacturers from 2027 onward will have the option, or will actually have to be able to provide two-way charging on electric vehicles, which in essence can make them large storage batteries on wheels.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you. Oops. Yeah, I guess the way I think about this is, you know, there's some of us who can afford to put rooftop solar, you know, solar panels on our rooftop and buy storage. I am, you know, one of those people. In Arizona, there are many exceptions to that in terms of the way the roofs are shaped, certainly in terms of, you know, financing. Leasing is problematic. I'm not saying, you know, rooftop solar is not important, and you know, if we can do it, we should do it. But we are basically relying on the backs of citizens to to provide green energy, where our utilities should be doing that. So if cities, you know, in terms of economies of scale, if cities and counties can come together and do this, you know, I think I'm an advocate for this. I think this is another approach as opposed to waiting, you know, till 2070 when APS says it's going to have, you know, 100% clean energy, which, by the way, is, you know, a good portion of that is nuclear energy. So I think there are exceptions. There's innovation. There's many things happening, but this is a proven program. So let me just keep going, because I'll show you a map and you'll see, you know, where it is across the country. So Peninsula Clean Energy, which is what PCE stands for, this is the largest CCE in California. And this slide is not up to date, but in the, you know, annually they are saving ratepayers. So Peninsula Clean Energy is, if you know anything about the Bay Area, this is San Mateo County. So it's about, I think it's 20 or 25 cities in the county belong to PCE, and they have managed to save customers about 18 million a year. I think they'll save a lot more in Arizona. That's the equivalent of about 145,000 metric tons of carbon saved annually, and the equivalent of, you know, almost 31,000 cars off the road. So, and this slide came out, I think, in 2020 or 2021. So it's much higher. And PCE is on schedule to be 100%, you know, their portion of the grid is going to be 100% renewable energy by, I believe, 2025. This is a map of where CCE is across the country. So there's 10 states that have passed what's called enabling legislation to allow any city or county to form a CCE. And then there's states like Virginia and Pennsylvania, which have enabled CCE, but none have launched yet. And Maryland is running a pilot of Montgomery County, which is the county nearest to Washington, D.C. California, or Arizona, New Mexico, and Colorado, those two, Colorado, New Mexico in particular, had, you know, got sponsors in the legislature to sponsor bills. Colorado passed a CCE feasibility study bill, which was completed by their Public Utilities Commission. Next year, they hope to introduce an enabling legislation bill. New Mexico had a bill, but it didn't pass. In Arizona, we actually had two legislators, one in the House and one in the Senate, who sponsored CCE feasibility study bills. They did not get introduced because of the current, you know, regime, but those two legislators said that they're going to bring those bills back next year. So that would allow, you know, the legislature would basically authorize a study to make sure it is actually feasible to do this in Arizona, that we can save ratepayers money and increase renewable energy. So this is a study that Russell performed. It was an analysis where we took, you know, basic household running 750 kilowatt hours a month, and then compared it to what would it be if a CCE, you know, if the same household belonged, you know, that customer was a member of a CCE. So in terms of dollar savings, it would be about a 29% savings, assuming that CCE's, you know, 80% of its energy was renewable energy. The carbon savings per month is about 1,800, you know, when APS household is burning about 1,800 pounds of CO2 a month compared to a CCE, which is about 300 pounds a month. So, you know, monthly it's not as significant, but yearly we're talking about removing, you know, 3 tons of carbon. Is that tons or metric tons? I think it's metric tons of CO2 per household. Or no, I'm sorry, it's tons of CO2 per household. So that's the dollar and carbon savings. And then in terms of water savings, it's pretty significant. And we don't talk about how much water utilities use to prop up their gas, nuclear, and, you know, coal plants. So, you know, solar uses very little water, wind uses no water. And so the monthly savings around water would add up to about 3,100 gallons, over 3,100 gallons per household. So if you add up the number of households in cities like Phoenix and Tucson, it gets pretty significant. So this is a slide, I know this is terrible, it's too much on here, but don't even read it. I'll just tell you what it says. So basically, you know, we've been around for about 3 years, and we have what we call I don't have it on here, but our levers of power, which is, levers of power. That's the legislature, the corporation commission, the attorney general's office, and then cities and counties. So I think we counted up to about 5 of these. So we have briefed a number of cities, and Tucson, some of you may already know this, but they adopted a climate action plan back in March of this year and actually included CCE in the energy section of their climate action and adaptation plan. And they are going to study it. They're going to do a feasibility study of CCE that's pending. They want to study municipal power versus CCE. They already, there's an article that came out in the Tucson Daily Star, which talked about the 2 models. Municipal power is cost prohibitive. So it will at least show, that there is, it'll be a good comparison. It'll be something on paper that, we'll then use to share with other municipalities. Both Flagstaff and Sedona have their sustainability staffs have recommended CCE. And in fact, they appear in their climate action plans. I've had a conversation with Flagstaff today. So we're hoping that, that they'll take a more aggressive stance around CCE and actually pass a resolution of interest. We have been contacted by the city of Phoenix. They're about to update their climate action plan, and they know that they're not going to reach their decarbonization goals under the current structure of APS. So they want to add CCE to their plan, knowing that, it's going to have to stay in the freezer for a while until it gets passed, until the NAPM legislation gets passed. But they're willing to put that kind of stake in the ground. And then we've briefed the Arizona League of Cities and Towns. Mistake, should be cities and towns. So they are supportive. We may actually be presenting at their annual conference in Tucson this year. And they have a board comprised of mayors, so we're going to be talking to them. So we are actually going to be embarking. Hopefully we're going to get some funding for this, but on what I'm calling a virtual cities tour, where we're going to contact a number of cities and offer briefings and, invite them to step up. If they have climate action plans, the city of Tucson was actually advised by their climate plan consultant, Burrow Happel, that they're not going to achieve their decarbonization goals without something like CCE. It's not going to happen by relying on people across the city to, install rooftop solar. So we're getting that kind of, backing. And so we are going to do this tour. We're actually kicking off this week. In fact, we have a meeting with our first city is Goodyear. Goodyear actually has more residential solar, rooftop solar, than any other city of its size in the country right now. I mentioned the 2 feasibility study bills, so those will come back. And then we actually had a conversation with the government affairs director of the Attorney General's office, because there's something called Title 48, which says that an electric district can sell power in what's called certificated territories. That's basically APS, TEP, and other utilities. And so what we're asking is, can a municipality buy power from an electric district versus the 2 investor-owned utilities? So we're waiting for an answer on that. But in the meantime, it was confirmed that either the legislature or the corporation commission can enable CCE if they have the political will. I have data centers up here because data centers are big energy users, as you probably know. And there's some that are huge, like Microsoft, is going to do its own behind the meter microgrid and storage. But most data centers are small and don't have those kind of deep pockets. So the president of AFCOM, which is the association that data center managers and IT directors and facility managers belong to, the president of AFCOM sees that they might get behind this and actually put their weight behind it. And so we're going to be presenting to them. We're going to be facilitating a panel. Russell's going to be on the panel, and I have a couple of CCA experts from California. So that's the end of July. And our hope is that they will get behind this. And, we may even say to them, we don't elect Democratic candidates or candidates that at least are behind renewable energy, nothing's going to change. So, you know, that may be significant for us. And then we have gotten grants from Calpine as an energy supplier that would love to do business in Arizona, that actually, you know, CCAs are a big source of revenue for Calpine because they do a back-end office management for CCAs. So wherever there's a CCA, they stand to make money. So they have given us money, and we may also receive a grant from Physicians for Social Responsibility, Tucson chapter. So we're hoping for that. And like I said, our next steps are to mobilize cities around this. So, you know, but basically what we're doing, and I can stop sharing, is, you know, trying to build stakeholder support with different stakeholder groups. And, you know it's a long game, and we're okay with that. We're going to keep working on this. So thank you. That was a lot of me talking. Thank you for listening. Any questions or comments? Or Scott is on our team. I don't know if he's still here. And anyway, if you want to add anything.
Shelly, I just want to say thank you. This is Chris Gelker. It was a great presentation, and I learned a lot.
Thank you, Chris. Great, thank you.
Shelly,
any other questions?
I noticed.
Steve.
Yeah, I noticed you had Prescott on your list of cities potentially interested in getting together the beginnings of a climate action plan and all that. Our Yavapai Climate Change Coalition has recently changed its name to the Quad Cities Climate Collaborative. And our recent meeting, we have a city council, a mayor we can work with right now, and we're pushing toward one or more study sessions that the council holds where they take a particular topic of interest to us. And I can see down the road of getting you or people with your group, before our city council, to give an educational, explanation. I mean, the program you've put on here has just been wonderful. But my concern is that this may be just, well, I mean, that in itself would be great, but in terms of where would the council, where would say the city of Prescott go from there? It seems like what we would want them to do would somehow use their clout to put pressure on either the legislature or the Arizona Corporation Commission. And it would seem like in the big picture, have them work with, the Arizona League of, who are the people
League of Cities and Towns.
Yeah, Arizona League of Cities and Towns. If a bunch of these groups could get together and make a big push to get the legislature or the Corporation Commission to actually do this. So anyway, I'm just throwing this out as a way to move forward. But we in Prescott, I think are very amenable to, to working with your group, or maybe even, having some of us be part of your group to make this happen in Arizona.
Wow, thank you. Oh. Could you put your name in the chat, your email, I mean?
I will.
So let me just respond. I love what you said, and I want to underscore what you said. Cities and counties are going to have to step up. There's the Bisbee debacle and the plastic bag ban. That, I don't know if that's put a chill in people, but that is something that, I've talked to my colleagues, including a former attorney from APS. He said, cities need to step up. They never hear from commissioners, and legislators don't hear from you meaning cities. So, that's part of our message. And they don't have to say, I think the fear is like, we're going to, we're fighting for CCE. They can say simply, we're interested in this. We want to study it. We want to study this model. Even if they said just that. And I'll just give a quick example. So we actually briefed Marquez Peterson, one of the commissioners who's up for re-election. And we had Flagstaff, Sedona, and I think maybe Scottsdale was there. And all I said to them was, just introduce yourself, say that you're interested in CCE. You don't have to say anything else. And she was very impressed. She said, I had no idea that cities actually want this. So they hear from grassroots organizations, but they don't hear from cities. And so, anyway, I'd love to talk to you more about, we can put a panel together. I've got my experts in California. They're willing to fly here. I mean, we'll come to Prescott. So anyway, we should chat about that.
Sounds great.
Thank you. And I see Russell has his hand up next.
Yeah, thanks. So one thing that I just really want to emphasize is that CCE probably, I mean, it almost certainly has the most potential of any of the options that we have. It's over 95% reduction in CO2 after about, 5 to 6 years. And especially after about 8 or 9 years when we're like 100% renewable, which 2 CCEs are already doing. They're scheduled to be at 100% by the end of 2024 after 9 years of operating. TEP wants to go to 100%, for example, by 2070, and I think APS is the same, but that would be with a lot of nuclear, which is really dirty energy. So nothing else comes close to CCE. If they tried to do a municipality, they would be so bogged down in acquisition costs. I mean, like $5 billion or whatever for Tucson, for example, maybe 2 billion, maybe 10 billion. We're not sure. The range is really staggering. They just wouldn't be able to do the acquisitions of renewables if they went that route nearly as quickly. And nothing else really comes close. I mean, the only thing that would really come close would be robust regulation, which is not in the cards, in Arizona, like a 100% renewable portfolio by 2030 or something like that. That would be great, but that just doesn't seem like it's in the cards. So CCE is the best game in town, really, but it needs to get cities behind it so that we actually have somebody to go to the utility, somebody to go to the corporation commission, somebody to go to the legislature with us, or in conjunction with our efforts, and be the real stakeholder. We're not the stakeholders. Arizona's for Community Choice is an advocacy group. We're not the stakeholder. The stakeholder is the city or the county. That would be the CCE.
Thanks, Russell. Benjamin.
Yeah, I don't want to rain on your parade with any happy thoughts of speaking with Leah Marquez Peterson, but she has never shown any real initiative to do anything other than appease the utilities. She in fact, just wrote a quick letter in the paper this morning in the Arizona Daily Star, basically excoriating Biden administration for particulate emissions that the EPA wants to. We just need to re-elect new people to the Corporation Commission. They're a terrible body right now.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I was making the point that even somebody like her was kind of surprised to see that that was my point, that cities are interested in this.
She seemed surprised when you talked to her in person, and I'm sure she was very pleasant to you, but I would not count on her support whatsoever.
I'm not.
Okay.
Okay. Looks like I think unless there's any more questions, thank you for the opportunity to present.
I do have a question, Shelly.
Oh, okay.
I've been trying to raise my hand, but it keeps going back down. I don't know.
Oh, yeah, it looked like you were clapping.
Oh, okay.
I think you clicked on the wrong.
Okay, maybe that's what it was. Okay.
Okay.
So just so I understand the whole process, the city, town, whatever, buys out the utility. And then after that, CCE comes along and works out the agreement with the city to buy the power. Is that how it works?
No, the city is not buying the utility. You're thinking of a muni power, municipal power.
Okay.
So a municipal power, yes, they essentially, it's almost like a hostile takeover. They take over the utility. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about this functional partnership with the utility, where the utility still does everything it does. We're just talking about the energy portion of the bundle, as I said. So
when you say the energy, the actual buying of the energy.
Buying, or like Russell said, entering into a power purchase agreement with a solar developer. There's Lots of examples of CCAs that, you know, arrange to have solar built or, you know, buy wind power. I mean, they do what utilities do, but just the power part.
Right.
Uh-oh. Ah, is that me? I'm sorry. Oh my God. How does that happen?
You look
Sorry.
fine on this end. You look fine on this end.
I don't know what happened.
Yeah, I haven't heard any glitches, Shelly. It's coming through okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
One of my, anyway, the YouTube video just started playing on its own. That's APS. They're spying on us. They're sabotaging. All right.
Well,
All
thanks,
right,
Shelly.
hopefully, yeah, thank you.
Everyone would give Shelly a hand. I know my internet's unstable, but if you would give her a hand, that'd be great.
Thank you, everyone.